Welcome everyone who's joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from.
I wrote a sticky note and put it on my computer that says, "Be the sponge."
There are some school-specific sponsorships which make you feel like more inclined towards them.
While you're in MBA, you have an unprecedented access to a lot of people, be it alums, recruiters, your professors, your career services. Make the most out of your time, talk to people, get a clear understanding of what you want to go into.
A very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to this webinar from GMAT Wiz, where we're going to solve hard RC inference questions, mostly which are based on the author's opinion in the passage. Just before we get started, would like to remind all of you that there is this MBA fair on at GMAT Club on the 13th and 14th June. And the top 30 B schools are participating. The administrative representatives, admission representatives of these top 30 B schools will be present in this fair, and do register your spot, guys. Already the link is there in the chat. And as you can see, a lot of spots on June 13th are gone. So please hurry up. June 14th is still on. And with that, let me get started with the session today. All right. So as I said already, we are going to specifically focus on those RC questions which ask you things about the author's opinion as stated in the passage. All right. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you guys. I can see a lot of you are there, and we hope to get started ASAP. So let me quickly set the agenda of the session today, guys. But before that, I'm your host for the evening, Sunita from GMAT Wiz. I'm the lead course architect of the GMAT course at GMAT Wiz, and I have mentored thousands of students. I love teaching, finding solutions for problems that students face. In fact, today's webinar is mostly focused on that. What are we going to learn today? The first and foremost thing that we're going to definitely focus on is how to read in the most effective manner. If you cannot read the passage properly, you cannot answer questions correctly. All right. But with reference to today's webinar, we are going to definitely talk about how to make note of authors' opinions as you read along. Now, often what we do is when we are reading the passage, we are just reading it. We're not really differentiating between what is the author's opinion and what is not the author's opinion. All right. And therefore, today we're going to talk about how to make note of the author's opinion as we read along. And we will definitely solve two passages with two questions each on questions related to the author's opinion. All right. And we're going to do this through really hard questions today. So do let me know if all of you can hear me loud and clear, guys. And do let me know if you're excited for today's webinar, because I am. I have never taken these passages earlier, and this is also going to be a, one of those sessions where the teacher learns as much as the student does. So guys, let me know if you guys are excited and if all of you can hear me loud and clear. I don't want to waste any more time. I'll just bring up the passage quickly. So once again, just to remind you that today we're going to focus on questions which particularly ask questions about authors' opinions. All right. Questions like what is the author most likely to agree with, or the author disagrees with so and so person, a third party mentioned in the passage, and so on and so forth. Okay, Yukti, all the best. So guys, a warm welcome again. Once again, I can see a lot of you have responded. Thank you so much. Hi, Jayan, Pranav, Shazia, Shubham, Yukti, Harpreet, Jaideep. All right. So Jaideep is asking, do you have to read a lot to be good at RC? Honestly speaking, people who do read a lot don't necessarily, find themselves able to answer RC questions accurately on the GMAT. It's a different kind of skill that you need, a wide variety of topics that you should be well versed with. So it's not that you definitely, you read a lot, but I would say that do inculcate the practice of reading diverse topics when you are preparing for GMAT. It makes you comfortable around words. All right. So Anuj, I'm going to talk about how to approach RC as well today. All right. So let's get started, guys. I'm going to bring up a passage on the screen for you guys, and I'm going to give you 6 minutes to read that passage. Yes, you heard me right. At GMAT Wiz, the technique that we propose, the involved and evolved reading, and there are lots of webinars that have taken on that particular approach. You can find it on the YouTube. If you just type involved and evolved reading GMAT Wiz, you'll come across it. All right, Prashant, I'm going to answer your question as well. But today I'm going to show you that as well, that how to read in the right manner, as I said earlier. So I'm going to bring up the passage. I'm going to give you 6 minutes to read the passage the way you read it now, okay? And then I'm going to show you how it should be read so that you're able to make note of the author's opinion and so that you can answer those 750 level questions accurately. You heard me right. Okay, so let's get started, guys. I'm going to just stop my camera so that you guys have access to the full screen. Let me know when you can see the passage. So there's the passage for you guys. All right. As I said, I'm going to give you 6 minutes. Please utilize those 6 minutes. Okay. Let's get started. Your time starts now. I'm going to bring up the question once you finish reading this passage. So please get started. For those of you who've just joined us, we are going to solve some really, really hard questions today based on the author's opinions and RC inference questions. Shazia, that question will take a bit long to answer. You know, RC in GMAT is different from other exams because it is a lot more inferential. Okay, all right. Funny, I think you'll have to adjust your video your screen resolution. I think the others, guys, are you able to read the text clearly? The others, if any one of you can just reply, are you able to read the text clearly? I hope the text is now clearer. I have deliberately given a little more time to all of you, those of you who have joined late. A few more minutes, another 3 minutes left, guys, and then I'll bring up the question. So please have patience. All right, guys. So Rahul has kind of given us a summary, old view versus new view. Author somewhat supports new view in context of non-political achievements. A good work, Rahul. Although we'll talk about how accurate that is, but good, good, good. So, guys, a lot of you were asking how to read the passage effectively. I'm going to show you that. But before that, let me bring up the first question of the evening. Here it is, guys. I'll give you 1 minute to answer this question. Go ahead. Your time starts now. One quick request. If you finish solving the question before that 1 minute is up, please hold on to the answer. Do not post it. I'll ask you when to post it. All right, guys? Thank you. All right, guys, you can start posting your answers. Rahul has already posted, and I'm so happy to see so many of you are participating today. We'll make sure that today we go away with a lot of takeaways. So Rahul says the correct answer is C. How about the others, guys? Shubham also believes it's C. Pramod believes it's C as well. Guys, do post your answers. As I've said earlier many a times, that you reaching out with your answers definitely helps us feel that we are interacting with more and more of you. Ravi also believes it's C. Anuj, C. Jaydeep B. Rahul. Go ahead, please, Rahul, ask your question. If I believe it is going to come up in the discussion anyways, I'll answer it right away. Abhay says C. Prashant believes it's B. Yukti believes it's C. Yes, guys. Now, one of the other things that we're going to look at today is, okay, you got the answer right. Was it by way of guessing or was it by way of correct elimination? Jayant also believes it's C. Dhyuti believes it's C. A lot of you believe it's C, right? Okay. Ashish believes it's C. Great. So there are a lot more of you out there than the answers that I have got. Ashish also believes it's C. So Jaideep says the author of the passage agreed with new scholarship. So guys, a lot of you might have got this correct, might have not got this correct, but the major idea of today's session was to see how to note the author's opinion such that you are able to answer all questions related to that particular passage and those opinions. So I'm going to get started with showing how to read this passage effectively and make note of author's opinions. All right, hold on to that. Rahul says, I gave my GMAT mark, I got stuck in one of the hard RCs. So Rahul, what the methodology that I'm going to show you right now, okay, follow that and see how different it is from what you are doing. If you're doing anything which is different from what we're going to discuss today, you will falter at least in the hard passages. Easy passages, sometimes it's okay to get away with a not very clear methodology. But then if you are going to prepare for a higher score, all right. So Ashish, Rahul, and a lot more others there, guys. The focus is not just this question. The focus is how to read the passage properly so as to answer similar questions. Okay, let me get started, guys. I'm going to make sure that all your questions are answered. Okay. So here's the first paragraph, and this is how we are going to read it. We call it the involved and evolved reading, and you can search YouTube for this with this title, Involved and Evolved Reading, and you'll get a lot of my webinars based on this concept. So let's get started. Recent feminist scholarship. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, in my mind, I'm going to kind of say, okay, there's something called the recent scholarship, all right? Recent feminist scholarship, so FS. And it's something which is recent, means it is new. Concerning the US in the 1920s, and this is also something that I will file away in my mind, that the scholarship is, or the study is basically related to the US and how it was in the 1920s. Okay, challenges. Now here's the verb for the subject, feminist scholarship. All right, so this study or these studies challenge something. Challenge means they question something, disagree with something. Note that this is the feminist scholarship which disagrees with something and not the author. So constantly you are noting who is saying what and why. I'll repeat that. Who is saying what and why? This is going to be your constant mantra. Okay, so I've already got my who. It's the feminist scholarship. What are they saying? They are questioning something. Why is yet to be seen. Sorry, guys. So they are challenging earlier interpretations. Now I am going to file this away in my mind as old view or old belief or old idea or any such thing. Simplify things so that your recall becomes simpler. So new view or feminist scholarship raises questions on earlier views. Okay, that. Now this that per your sentence correction is a connector, and now whatever is going to come up is going to be what this old view believed. Okay, so the earlier interpretations assessed the 20s. Which 20s? The same 20s that the feminist scholarship is talking about, in terms of unkept promises. Unkept promises means unfulfilled promises or unfulfilled ideas of the women's suffrage movement. Now, if you already know women's suffrage movement, good. If you don't know, for you, this is something related to women's movement. Okay. And at GMAT Wiz, we tell students to wait and look out for context further, which can tell them the meaning of words that they don't understand. By the way, if you have already been preparing for GMAT for some time, you will know that suffrage is a very, very commonly used word, and it comes up pretty frequently in some of these passages. So women's suffrage movement basically talks about the women's voting rights movement, all right? And remember, you can link it to feminist scholarship talking about women's movement, all right? So if I were to summarize this portion, the new scholarship questions the old idea. And what was the old idea doing? The old idea was interpreting or examining or assessing the 20s in the light of what was not achieved by the WSM. What was not achieved by the WSM? The unkept promises. Okay, done. So I have identified who is saying and what, the crux. Why, I still don't know, because this is the first sentence of the passage. Let's go to the next sentence. This new scholarship disputes. Okay, so I have another disagreement by the same new scholarship. What does it dispute? The long held view. Again, the old view. That, again, a connector. Because a women's voting bloc did not materialize after women gained the right to vote. All right, so the long held view is citing something as a cause of something. And what is that cause? Women gained the right to vote in the 1920s, but a proper women's voting group did not really come about after that. Okay, so because this group did not come about, suffrage failed to produce long-term political gains for women. So the new scholarship disagrees again, I'm saying, with the old idea. And what is the old idea? WSM failed to achieve political benefits for women because voting rights did not lead to the formation of women's voting bloc. It's very important you summarize in your own words. So far, the author is telling us how the new scholarship differs or disagrees with the old ideas on various aspects of the old ideas. Two aspects so far. Let me move ahead. These feminist scholars, that means we're again talking about the new scholarship, also challenge the old view, again questioning the old view. That, okay, so we again have a similar structure. Pronounce suffrage a failure for not delivering on the promise that women's vote would bring about moral, corruption-free governance. In short, the new scholarship again disagrees with the old view that the women's suffrage movement failed to fulfill the promise of a moral, corruption-free government that would come about once women were allowed to vote. So we have the new scholarship's disagreement on three aspects of the old view. All right. And then we have asked whether women's suffrage was a failure. So somebody is being asked whether women's suffrage, women's voting rights, women's voting movement was a failure. These scholars, which scholars? The feminist scholars, cite the words of, so there is a social reformer called Jane Addams. Why don't you ask if suffrage in general is failing? So instead of answering that question, that whether women voting right was a failure, these people are going ahead one step and saying that probably it was voting in general that was failing. That means democracy wasn't really working. Why has this sentence been asked here? Just to reinforce the fact that the new scholarship was identifying that the long-held view wasn't right. So the overall inference that I can draw, now this is important, based on this, and this, new scholarship likely believes that women's scholarship movement wasn't the total failure. How do we know it wasn't the total failure? Because it is challenging, okay, it is challenging the old idea, and the old idea is talking about failure, which means the new scholarship clearly doesn't think that WSM was a total failure the way it is made out to be by the old view. So the summary of this paragraph would be the author talks about the various aspects of the old view that were challenged by the new feminist scholarship, whichever way you write it. See, you don't have to write all this, but you have to read it this way, guys. Do let me know if this gives you a clearer picture, guys. We'll come to the question also, but then, so Abhay, Sandeep, Ashish, Rahul, Jaideep, Dhyuti, Yukti, Prashant, Jayant. If I leave out somebody's name, please, I'm sorry. Ravi, Anuj, Pramod, Shubham, Lebson. Do let me know if this method of reading makes things clearer. You see, what we are doing here is at every turn of the sentence, we are keeping pace with turn of ideas or change in ideas. Again, as I said, you might have got this question correct, but then did you read it the correct way? Would you have been able to solve the other questions based on the author's view as well. Great, guys. I'm going to show you the involved and evolved reading once again for the second and the third paragraphs put together. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for your yeses. Thank you so much. So let me now move to the second paragraph. Here it goes. Now, the second and third paragraphs are very small paragraphs, so I've kind of combined them together. In some ways, however, now, this particular point here, who is saying this, however, since nobody has been attributed so far, this must be the author saying, however, here. That means the author wants to offer a contrast with the previous para, okay, whatever is stated in the first para. And this, if you don't do right away, you're going to lose track. You're going to lose track of where the turn is taking place. So author here is saying, however, these scholars, which scholars? The feminist, the new feminist scholarship scholars, still present the 1920s as a period of decline. Now, what is the significance of this still? If we go back to the previous slide, we were saying the new scholarship likely believes WSM wasn't the total failure. So although the new scholarship believes that women's suffrage movement wasn't the total failure, still they present the 1920s as a period of decline. So what are we doing here? We are using the summary of the previous para to link it to this para to understand what the author is trying to say. So the author is saying, look, these new scholars, okay, they disagree with almost everything the old scholarship is saying, and yet they are going ahead and pinpointing 1920s as a period of decline. All right. So author's opinion here is, although new scholarship believes this wasn't a total failure, the new scholarship still shows the 1920s to be a period of decline. And then if you read the portion after this, the details here, this is telling us how they are painting the 1920s as a period of decline. Okay, they here would refer to the new feminist scholars. All right, and they are arguing the feminist movement lost its cohesiveness. If you know what is cohesiveness, good. If you don't, leave it. It lost something, and it lost gender consciousness. Okay, after the mid 1920s, few successes could be claimed by the feminist reformers. So few successes, little could be seen. That means hardly anything could be seen in the way of legislative or some sort of political victories. So all in all, we are talking about how the new feminist scholarship shows that 1920s failed in so many ways. All right, despite saying that the old view was wrong. Okay, so this is what we have in the second para. Author saying that the new scholarship still paints 1920s as a period of decline. During this decade, however, now look at this again. That means now this, however, is a contrast to all these failures, right? So now again, the author is saying, despite the fact that the new feminist scholars paint the the 1920s as a period of decline, despite that what? Let's see. There was intense activism, okay? That means strong, great activism aimed at achieving, so targeted at achieving increased autonomy, that is self-governance for women. All right, so this is something positive here. The author is saying something positive did take place. Broadening the spheres within which they live their daily lives. Again, something which is positive here. Women's organizations worked to establish opportunities for women. Positive. They strove to secure for women full entitlements of citizenship. Positive. Including the right to hold office and the right to serve on juries. Positive. So the author is saying, now look at what the author's opinion is about the 1920s, and is it matching with the new scholarship? New scholarship still shows 20s to be a period of decline, more failures, few successes. Author is saying the period wasn't a total failure, cites the successes achieved by the feminist movement. So we can infer that, unlike the new feminist scholars, okay, who believe 20s was a period of failure for the WSM, the author believes the 1920s did see some achievements. So the summary of this paragraph is, Although new scholarship still shows the 1920s to be a period of decline, the author believes the 1920s did see some achievements. If you put together the previous paragraph and these two paragraphs, what do we have? New scholarship challenges the old view. Old view is about women's suffrage movement failing. So the new view has to be that women's suffrage movement wasn't a total failure, and yet they go ahead and say that it was a period of decline. But the author kind of goes against that and says, no, it was not all decline. So clearly the author is not really totally in sync with the new feminist scholars. And therefore, if we come to answering our question now, what is the question asking? It can be inferred that the author of the passage disagrees with the new scholarship, okay, regarding, you have to ask yourself, regarding which aspect? Regarding which aspect? Now, if you have read the passage clearly, you would know that the author disagrees with the new scholarship on the, sorry guys, give me a moment. With the idea that, or regarding the fact that 1920s was a period of failure or not, correct? So I'm looking for a choice that will tell me that the author disagrees with the new scholarship regarding how much of a failure the 1920s really was. Okay, let's get started on the answer choices. So I'm here, if you see, the answer choice is basically a continuation of this sentence, right, regarding the degree. So I have to read like this, that the author disagrees with the new scholarship regarding the degree to which the promises of the suffrage movement remained unkept. Now remember, who disagreed with the idea that promises of the suffrage movement remained unkept? It was the new scholarship disagreeing with the old view. So only the new scholarship questioned the old view that promises weren't kept. The author had nothing to say about this. Degree to which suffrage for women improved the morality of government. Again, remember, it was the new scholarship which was challenging this aspect of the old view, not the author. Degree to which the 1920s represented a period of decline. Yes, this is definitely the aspect on which the author is offering an opinion. Remember, look at this. Look at your understanding of the author's opinion. Look at these 2 points. If you have followed the author's opinion, you would know that this is per our analysis and they will keep this on hold. Degree of legislative success achieved by feminist reformers. Remember, this was argued by the new scholarship. They felt that feminist reformers had not achieved much in terms of legislative victories. Accuracy of the view that a women's voting bloc did not materialize. Again, this was the old view which was challenged by the new scholarship. So the correct answer is C. Now, if you got it right the right way and not just by looking at some familiar words here and there, then it's fine. But this particular analysis was meant to show you how you should read effectively and how you should make note of the author's opinion. So, guys, do let me know, okay? Abhay, in this particular question, you can directly select options, okay, perhaps, but I would not advise that. You could so easily go wrong, all right? So Prashant, on a daily basis, you should read on topics like biology, very, very common topic, common area from which passages come. So biology, physics, as far as science goes, these 2 areas, business and economics, women's history, especially with relevance to American history, all right? Definitely you could read up on the American struggle, American history in general. Anuj, that was a very good way of summing up. So Anuj has summed it up very well. When there are multiple people involved in a passage, we should keep in mind the 3 W's, who, what, and why. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Anuj. Absolutely. All right, absolutely. If you are following this method right from the beginning, you will rarely feel the need to go back to the passage again and again to verify things. Ankit, you don't need to make the notes. While you're training yourself to read in the involved and evolved manner, if you want, you can. I don't recommend making too many notes during the exam. I wouldn't. But you train your mind to kind of note wherever there are turns. Because I'm taking this webinar and I want you guys to see how I'm noticing things, I'm writing these full sentences. You could just use a shorthand, just some acronyms and some alphabets and some arrows. That's it. So Anuj, for business and economic affairs, The Economist is good. For science-based topics, you can read aldaily.com, atlantic.com, sciencedaily.com. I would say even for some of the mixed opinion passages, you can read Harvard Business Magazine. Then I would suggest there's this site called oxfordre.com where you get a lot of stuff on American history, including American women's history. You could read those as well. All right. Great, guys. So I'm going to bring up the next question of this passage and let's see. But before that, building the right reading skills is very, very important. And at GMAT Wiz, we teach you where to pause. You would have seen I was pausing at certain places. I was taking care of certain complex words. Either I was getting the meaning or I was just kind of ignoring it. Or I was waiting for the context to tell me what the meaning was. I was making note of what were the facts and what were the opinions, whose opinions. I was differentiating between the author's opinion and I was trying to understand what the author was really trying to portray in the passage as a whole. Remember, you also have to answer main point questions, and you can search for my webinar on YouTube on main point questions. So at GMAT Wiz, we have dedicated hours to teaching you how to read in an involved and evolved manner, guys. Okay, we tell you how to focus on transition words, how to note opinions, how to summarize, how to identify the main idea of the passage. You can see how we have segmented and we have dedicated hours to small issues as well, making sure that you learn how to utilize all these things together when you're reading the passage. In fact, I am going to quickly share with you the link to the free trial version of our course, which you can check out, guys. Just give me a moment. And if you're interested, you can definitely give a sneak peek at the free trial version to see how we go about showing that. There it is on your screen, guys. So Prashant, you should read the articles just the way I've showed you today, okay? Everywhere, because that's the way you're going to read in the exam. So Jaideep, I'm sure that the last para is the author's opinion because nobody else has been attributed. On the passage, if the opinion is not attributed to anybody, then you have to assume that it is the author's opinion. Yukti, I have had students who have improved from the 600s to a 700 plus in 24 days. All right, I'm going to share the link of one such student later down the line. Okay, or you can just go to YouTube and search for Akshat GMAT Wiz and you'll get the debrief. He scored a 720, I think 730 or 720 in 24 days and he started with a 630. All right, so it is possible to do that just by following this repetitively day in and day out. Ashish, if you are left with two options, closely examine what each of the options is saying. So identify what is the difference between those two options. All right. For example, in this case, if I remember, you said that you were confused between, let me see, Ashish, you were confused between C and D, right? That's what you said, correct. So let's take a step back and go back to C and D. Okay. Now, C, so what is the difference? First of all, degree to which, degree to which? Degree of legislative success. All right. So this choice is saying that the author disagrees something, all right, disagrees with something about legislative success. If required, you should have mapped your, the mental map that you have drawn of the passage. You should know that, okay, the legislative success was being spoken about. I'll just take you back. The legislative success was being spoken about in the second para, and that was by new feminist scholars and not the author. And therefore, this cannot be something that the author disagrees with. And that is how you eliminate two close choices. Okay, so you have to first identify what is the difference between two choices, and then only. I hope I have answered all your questions, guys. Let me see if I have any. So Jaideep, I already answered that the last para is the author's opinion, because there nobody has been attributed. The author is not mentioning that new scholars are saying this. Okay, if it has not been mentioned, it means it is the author's opinion. Anuj, rather than how many passages, it is how you solve one passage. Okay, so make sure you're solving the passage properly. I would say, depending on how far your exam is, if your exam is within a month, maybe 3 passages a day, but do them properly. Okay, do them properly. Don't ever stress test yourself. I would say take some combined quizzes, so where you have RC, SC, and CR. That's what I advise my students who come to GMAT with. It's not just that you just take up 4 passages and do them back to back. No, in the exam you won't get them back to back. Okay. So always make sure that you're practicing passages individually first, and then stress test when you're taking, then it should be combined. The RC passages should be combined with CR and SC as well. All right, guys, so I am going to just hide that link. In fact, guys, since a lot of you have been asking a lot of questions related to the strategy part of it, what you could also do is, if your exam is quite close by and you need help, you can talk to our strategy experts. I'm going to post the link there. Just give me a moment. So on the screen, you can see a link where you can book a free call with our experts at GMAT Wiz. All right. Okay, let me bring up the next question of the passage. Here's the next question, guys. Get going. You have I'll give you 1.5 minutes, because I think so Narayana, I already answered that question, that if you're not able to understand difficult passage, why is that? Because you're not reading properly. You're reading the full sentence in one shot. You won't be able to understand a 45-word long sentence in one shot. You need to break it up. You need to learn to read it properly, which is what we teach in our SC course, how to read a sentence properly and connect sentences. So I'm going to mute myself and I'll leave you to answer this question. Okay, you can start posting your answers, guys. So the answers that are coming forward are A so far. All of you have answered A. Let me wait for a few more answers. And then I've got another passage, another hard-hitting passage coming up, guys. And we are going to solve that passage again in the same manner. All right, so I've got mostly A so far. Jaideep says C. Guys, would love to hear some more answers. Okay, Tanvi Narayana also believe it's A. Anuj believes it's A. So mostly it's A. Jayant A. All right, let's look at whether it's A or not, so that we can start with the next passage. Now, the question here is, it can be inferred that the analysis of the author of the passage, so analysis of the author and analysis, this is plural if you see, of the scholars. Okay, that means the new feminist scholars differ with regard to which of the following. So once again, we've got, so remember, from our pre-thinking, we know that the author and the new feminist scholars differ definitely on one account, and that is the new feminist scholars believe that 1920s was a period of decline despite disagreeing with the old view, and the author believes it was not really a period of decline. And then each of them, so the author cites his own reasons here for declaring it on not a period of decline, and then these scholars are also citing their own reasons, right? And we see there is no overlap. For example, the author does not disagree with this, the author does not disagree with this, the author does not disagree directly with this, but the author definitely talks about what were the things that actually took place. So let's get started with the answer choices. The criteria they use, the criteria they refers to the author of the passage and the new feminist scholars. So their difference is regarding the criteria they use to evaluate the success of the feminist movement. So what does this sentence mean? This means that the two differ in their opinion, and their criteria for that difference of opinion is different. Okay. And what is the difference? We can see that the criteria here is legislative victories. The criteria here is autonomy. The criteria here is gender consciousness. The criteria here is women being given the right to hold office and the right to serve on juries. All right. So clearly here A can be put on hold. That definitely they differ. They cited different things when putting forward their points of view. Let's hold on to A. Their interpretations of the promises. Now, as far as promises go, the author had no opinion to offer on this. Remember? So this is definitely out. Suggestions they make, now none of them made any suggestions how to achieve feminist goals. So this is out. Their definitions of what constitutes a legislative victory. As far as legislative victory is concerned, only the new scholars mentioned it. The author neither denied it nor agreed to it, and the author does not even talk about it. So definitely this choice is also out. None of them define what is legislative victory. Their estimations of the obstacles preventing women's having achieved a voting bloc. Remember, women's having achieved voting bloc or not was per the old view, right? And the new feminist scholars disagreed with this. However, the author doesn't offer any opinion whether the women achieved a voting bloc in the 1920s or not, or what were the obstacles that prevented the women from achieving that bloc. So this is also out, and therefore the correct answer is A. Okay, again, remember the reasoning with which you're answering these questions is important, and not, just finding some familiar words. Absolutely, Abhay. So guys, we've discussed this passage quite at length, and I hope you guys have got a good idea about the involved and evolved reading method, guys. I'm going to bring up the next passage for you without wasting any more time. Here it comes. Let me just make that bold so that you guys are able to read it. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to read this, guys. So go ahead. I hope this is visible. Yes, Narayana, good. So the only way you can successfully answer these questions is if you have actually made note of the author's opinion. Now, because you knew today's session, see, I'm going to be very frank. A lot of you knew that today's session was going to be about inferences drawn on questions based on author's opinion. So you were perhaps a little more conscious. But are you as conscious when you're answering all passages, when you're going through all passages? Okay. So we are going to talk about involved reading again when we are explaining this passage. Guys, get going. I'm going to mute myself. All right, guys, you can start putting in. Oh, sorry, I haven't brought the question up. So I hope you're done with reading it, and here comes the question. This is the first question. Go ahead, guys. All right, guys, your time is up. So please put in your answer choices before we go ahead with the discussion of this passage. Yes, it is a tough passage, then the whole idea of today's session was to look at passages which are tough. So Anish, Anuj, Shubham, and Ritesh believe the correct answer is B. Lepson believes it's C. I'll wait for a few more responses, guys. Rahul also believes it's B. It was a good summary, Rahul, by the way. Then I have got some more answers. Tandi also believes it's B. Pramod believes it's B. Funny, guys, right? When you think that what you are looking for, when you know what you're looking for right from the beginning, it's easier to detect it. Okay, let me see. So Pramod believes it's B, Ben believes it's C, Jan believes it's B. Otherwise, these questions are on GMAT Club. These questions are supposed to be 50%, 60% people get it incorrect. Ashish believes it's B. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your responses, guys. Once again, let's get started to let's get started with the involve and evolve reading. As I said earlier also, the purpose is not just to answer the questions correctly, but also to know that you're following the correct process to answer the questions correctly. Let's get started. Okay, here's the first paragraph. Because the framer, so right at the beginning, some cause is being cited. So my brain will say, okay, a certain cause and effect is going to be cited right at the beginning, and I've got to identify what that cause is and what is the effect of that cause. Because the framers of the US Constitution believed something. And what did they believe? There is again a dash here, if you see the connector. They believed that protecting property rights relating to inventions, so they wanted to protect the rights to inventions. So they believed that protecting the rights to inventions would encourage the new nation's economic growth. The new nation's economic growth would refer to which nation? Obviously the US. Remember, the constitution was being written, so the new nation has to be the US's economic growth. So because, look at how I'm picking, because the framers believed believed rights to inventions would encourage. I'm just going to remove the part which I'm not underlining, okay? So because framers of US Constitution believed rights to inventions would encourage economic growth. This is the cause. Because of this, they gave Congress. Congress was the national legislature, that means the one that was making the laws probably. A constitutional mandate, that means a constitutional necessary rule to be followed, to grant patents for inventions. Okay, so this long sentence I'm able to make sense of because I'm breaking it and reading. In summary, the framers of US Constitution thought something. Patenting inventions would boost economic growth. Sum it up. Crux. Who is saying this? The framers. Who thought this? The framers. All right. What did they think in the crux? Great. 1/4 of your paragraph already understood. The resulting patent system has served as a model for those in other nations. Now, this is a pure fact. Who is stating this fact? The author. Mind it, it is not the author's opinion. It is a fact that currently, okay, when you're saying has served, present perfect, you're saying that the other nations are currently still using this patent system as a model for their own systems, patents. Okay. Recently, however, so we've got a contrast here and we've got to see that whether this contrast is the author's opinion or somebody else's. Scholars have questioned, okay, so we're just talking about scholars' opinions, whether the American system helped achieve the framers' goals. And here itself, I'll ask myself, what were the framers' goals? Economic growth. So then these scholars don't think that the American system helped achieve the framers' goals. That means they don't think the patent system helped to boost economic growth. All right. So scholars question the achievement of the goal. All right. Fine. These scholars have contended that. So the author is continuing probably with this argument, how they believe that the American system failed to achieve the framers' goals. These scholars have contended that from this period to this period, American inventors were unable to enforce property rights. That means the patent, now think about it, the patent was supposed to provide them with property rights, but these inventors were not able to get that property right. Why? Transition word. Because judges were anti-patent or anti-patent, that means they were against patents and routinely invalidated patents for arbitrary reasons. That means now, what does that mean? So scholars are citing that judges were anti-patent and they invalidated the patents randomly without any reason, correct? This was their grounds, their complaint, okay. This argument is based partly on, now who is saying this? The author probably. The author is telling us what is the basis of such accusation. This argument is based partly on examination of court decisions in cases where patentees brought suit, that means they brought cases alleging, that means accusing infringement of their patent rights. Now, even if we don't know what is infringement, if the patentees are coming to court, clearly they're coming with the complaint that their rights are not being given. So infringement could only mean violation. Sorry guys for the spelling mistake, my bad. For the violation of the property or the patent rights. Okay. So these scholars, the argument is based on court decisions in the 1820s. All right. In the 1820s, for instance, the example is also being given. 75% of verdicts were decided against the patent. So the author is saying that this was the basis on which the scholars complained that judges were anti-patent. That means that the judges were biased. And then the author states another fact. The proportion of verdicts for the patentee began to increase in the 1830s. That means after the, after 1830, in the 1830s, okay, the patentee found more and more verdicts being given in favor of him or her. Suggesting to these scholars, that means now the author is again going to give us the opinion of these scholars. What did these scholars believe? They believed that in the 1830s, attitude towards patent rights began shifting. Shifting from what? Earlier, the judges were anti-patent, according to these scholars. And now these scholars are thinking that judges' attitude towards patents changed. That means the judges became unbiased or less biased at least. This is what the scholars thought. So look at how you're following the train of thought. Scholars thought, scholars question. Nowhere we have the author's view here. The author definitely supplies some data here, but just to tell us what the opinions are backed by. So if I have to summarize this paragraph, okay, what is the summary of this paragraph? Some US scholars believed that patents did not achieve their objective of aiding economic growth, since judges before 1830s were anti-patent and changed their attitude only after the 1830s. Since, and let me add here, in their opinion. In their opinion, judges before 1830s were anti-patent. Clear? So you see how you can simplify even a very, very tough passage. Yes, Anish, very good. All right. So just let me know with a yes if you have followed this method of reading clearly. Does it help guys to understand better? Do you find yourself coming up with a better understanding of the paragraph than when you read it? Do let me know with your yes, guys. If it is a yes, if it's a no, you can please feel free to say a no also. Do you find yourself coming up with a better understanding of this paragraph? So practice this involved and evolved reading, okay, and you will get to a level where this will become very intuitive for you, reading like this. All right, guys, thank you. Let me proceed forward. Again, you've got a big chunk of a paragraph. Right at the beginning, we start with not all patent disputes were litigated. Now, who is saying this? It's a fact. Not all patent disputes were litigated. That means were tried in the case, tried in the court. However, so this, however, you have to imagine is actually supposed to be here. So the author is contrasting whatever was mentioned in the previous paragraph. So the author is saying, although scholars believed that judges were anti-patent earlier and became less anti-patent or less biased afterwards, and all of this was based on the data they had on the verdicts on cases. What we have to remember, the author is telling us that all cases were not brought to court. And the cases that were brought to court were not randomly drawn from the population of disputes. Okay, that means they were very specifically chosen cases. So what the author is really saying probably is that the data on which these scholars drew their conclusions wasn't really representative. Okay, this is what the author is saying. Data not really representative. Okay, that is the author's opinion. And then the author goes on to say that, therefore, author's conclusion, clearly because nobody else is attributed to the conclusion here. Rate of verdicts in favor of patentees cannot be used by itself to understand the changes in judicial attitude. So what the author is really saying is, judicial attitudes cannot be judged based on the rate of verdict, okay, or the change in judicial attitude cannot be judged based on this. What else does the author say? If early judicial decisions were prejudiced, that means the scholars were saying, right, that early the judges earlier were biased, they were anti-patent, right? So the author is saying, if they had been, really anti-patent, one might expect that subsequent courts means later courts, allegedly, that means supposedly more supportive of patent rights. Supposedly means the author does not believe this, that later they were actually more supportive, correct? That is why he's saying allegedly. Subsequent courts would reject the former legal precedents. So the author is telling you clearly that had the judges been biased, then the decisions would have been rejected by later courts. Okay, that's what the author is saying in this sentence till here. But pre-1830 cases have been cited as frequently as later decisions, and they continue to be cited today. All right. So if the earlier decisions were prejudiced, today's courts wouldn't use those decisions as precedents, right? As reference points. And then the author is telling you actually they are being used today, which means what? Those decisions were used later and are used even today. What does that mean? What is the author trying to tell us here? Clearly, here the author is trying to tell us that earlier, okay, earlier decisions were not biased, which means earlier the judges were also not biased, clearly, okay? And then the author talks about the proportion of judicial decisions in favor of patentees began to increase because. So clearly, the author is, let's say, countering the scholar's view as to why the decisions in favor of patentees increased after 1830. The decisions in favor of patentees began to increase during the 1830s is a fact. All right, author is not disputing that, but the author believes the real reason behind that increase is something else. What is that? Change in the underlying population of cases brought to trial. That means the kind of cases that started coming up after in the 1830s was different. And why was it different? Why were the cases different? That itself was due to some revision that took place in 1836 to the patent system. And what was that revision? It was this. An examination process was put into use. That means before you applied, you had to, your application had to pass that examination process. That means you had to follow the patent law more closely. Earlier, you were granted a patent just by paying $30, but with the change, your patent application would have to follow an examination procedure. All right. So the author is citing the real reason behind the increase in decisions favoring patentee. What's the real reason? There was a change in the nature of cases brought to the trial. The change was partly due to a revision in the patent system, and the patents were granted after checking whether they followed the patent law or not. So summary here is judges prior to 1830s were never really biased against patents, right? And this is the author's opinion. Why? Because their verdicts have been used as precedents since then. And then the author cites the real reason. So if we come to this question here, right? What is the question? The author is likely to agree with the idea that, okay, so this is the connector here. We are talking about what is the author likely to agree with. The frequency with which pre-1830 cases have been cited in the court decisions. So the frequency, this is the subject, is an indication of something. All right. So we have to identify that according to the author, the frequency with which the earlier case verdicts are cited in later court decisions, what is that an indicator of? It's clearly an indicator that the earlier decisions weren't biased, right? If you follow the, the pre-thinking. The author says this is the scholar's opinion, that judicial attitudes towards patent rights began shifting then. And after that, the author tells us judicial, let me put it this way, change in judicial attitudes. So this is the author's opinion, this is the scholar's opinion. And the author is saying judicial attitudes cannot be judged based on this. Okay, so the author finally says, had judges been biased, their decisions would have been rejected by later courts, but they were not. So references, the judicial support actually did not increase after 1830. It only seemed to do so to the scholars. And with this, we are going to approach our answer choice. Okay, so according to the author, the frequency of the decision cited is an indication that judicial support for patent rights was strongest? No. Nowhere are we talking about when the patent rights were strongest. Okay. And definitely the author has nothing to say about before 1830s, except that before 1830s, whatever verdicts were taken, they were cited later, but whether that was the strongest period or not, we have no idea of that. Judicial support for patent rights did not increase. Yes, did not increase. This is perfectly correct for our pre-thinking, so we will hold on to B. A lot of you mark B. Courts have returned to judicial standards. Look, The courts definitely refer to the earlier decisions, okay? But that is not to say that they return to judicial standards. It's like saying there were different judicial standards followed earlier and there were different judicial standards followed later. No, this is a distortion of the idea that they quoted earlier decisions, okay? The frequency is an indication that verdicts did not increase. No, this is wrong. Verdicts did increase. Okay, verdicts increased. Increase is a fact. If you read the first para, increase was a fact. Look at this. Look at this. This is a fact here, right? This is a fact. What it suggests to scholars is not a fact. But the proportion of verdicts really began to increase. So the author is not saying that the frequency of the cases being cited later is an indication that the verdicts did not increase in favor of the patentee. So he is out. Judicial bias against patentees persisted after the author doesn't believe that the bias was there in the first place. So this is definitely out, and the correct answer is B. A lot of you got that right, and I'm just so happy. Once again, look at the process that we are using here, okay? That is the learning. Those of you who are struggling to answer RC inference questions based on the author's opinion or based on any other opinion, or based on simply the fact that you have to draw inferences from multiple areas in the passage. This is the kind of reading that you need to do. Once again, let me share with you the free trial version of the course, guys. If you're interested in taking a sneak peek at the course, please go ahead and make use of this link. The link is there on screens in front of you. At GMAT, we believe that RC skills have to be developed from the base. Okay, it's just not, you don't just rush and read the passage and just focus more on the questions. That's not how it works. You focus more on the passage, the answers will come easily. Great. All right, let me quickly take you to the next. Here's the question, the second question based on the same passage, guys. Go ahead. I'm going to mute myself in the meantime. So Ravi, before you think of improving the time, improve the method. Okay, so initially when you apply this method, it will take you 20 minutes to read the passage. All right, even 22 minutes to read the passage and solve the question. But gradually, when this skill becomes a part of your daily reading habit, okay, or rather, let me put it this way, this reading in this manner becomes intuitive to you, the time will automatically go on, and I'm saying this from experience. All right, so break and read so that you don't have to reread, Ravi. Break and read so that you don't have to reread. Connect or draw correlation between sentences so that you don't have to go back to the passage when you're answering questions. All right, guys. So let me look at the answers that you're posting. You're welcome, Ravi. Rahul believes it's either C or D. Anish D. Let's see D. Anuj D. I'll wait for some more responses. So guys, one thing just to add before I sign off, because this is the last question of the day. Please remember, reading and comprehension, we've got it wrong. If you read fast, it's not going to help you save time. It's a time irony. The faster you try to read the passage, the less accurate you are, the more time you're going to take. You're going to go back to the passage again and again. Like, As I've mentioned, it's like watching the tennis ball on the Wimbledon. Two throw, two throw, two throw. No point in doing that. Ashish also believes it's C. So it's really between C and D, it seems. Okay, let me get going with the analysis. All right, what is the question asking? It can be inferred from the passage that the author and the scholars, okay, referred to in the highlighted line, disagree about which of the following aspects of the patent before 1830. So we are specifically talking about the patents defended, okay, defended in patent suits before 1830. Remember, so now if you recall from the passage, if you've mapped your passage mentally well, remember, let me take you back to that part. Rather, let me just, okay, give me a moment. I'll just bring that particular slide ahead where we did our pre-thinking. Hold on a second. This was the first paragraph, right? So let me just. Let me just refer to that once again. Right? So if we refer to, no, which slide is it? Yeah. If we refer to this slide, okay, the question is asking us what is the disagreement between the author and the scholars regarding cases before 1830, right? Before 1830. Before 1830. So scholars, okay, before 1830 believed judges were anti-patent and they invalidated patents randomly, correct? This is about the before 1830. And they believe that in the 1830s, that means after 1830, 31, 32, 33, the attitude changed. But before 1830, the attitude was anti-patent and the judges were randomly or arbitrarily disqualifying the patents. This is what we have. Okay. So based on this, we are going to go forward and search for the correct answer. So what is the aspect about which they disagree? Whether the patents were granted for inventions that were genuinely useful. Now, I don't think the usefulness of the patents has been brought up anywhere. The whole argument is about whether the judges are biased or unbiased, but whether the patents themselves were useful or not has not been brought up anywhere. So, out here. Whether the patents were actually relevant to the growth of the US economy. This was what only the scholars brought up, right? Remember, it was only the scholars that questioned whether American system helped achieve the famous goal. So the author doesn't talk about this at all. So B is out. Whether the patents were particularly likely to be annulled by judges. Are we talking about the probability? Ask yourself, what is this choice saying? Probability of cases being crossed out, right? No. The question, the scholars believe that before 1830s, the judges were biased. The author believed they were not really biased, which is why their decisions were cited later. But what was the probability, that the patents were going to be annulled by the judges? Nobody disagrees about it. The probability of annulment is not questioned, guys. Remember, the author doesn't even believe there was a bias. So where will he discuss the probability of the annulment? So a lot of your marks C is not the answer. Whether the patents were routinely invalidated for reasons that were arbitrary? Yes. Okay. Yes, what? The scholars believe yes, and the author says no, right? How do we know that? The author says now the rate of verdicts in favor of patentees cannot be used to gauge the changes. That means The author believes the judicial attitude did not change. Did not change means that the judges did not invalidate them for arbitrary reasons. So clearly we can infer this. So D is the correct answer. Let's look at E. Whether the patents were vindicated at a slightly lower rate than the patents in later suits. I think the vindication or the judgment at a significantly lower, there's no comparison of rates. This is out and therefore this is the correct answer. Once again, just to remind you guys, it is very, very important how you read it. All right. So a lot of you have marked D as the correct answer as well. And some of you have marked C as the correct answer. It was really D. Difficult passages, guys, difficult questions, but I think a lot of you came prepared today to note the author's opinion. Perhaps you're not doing that when you're reading it. You won't know which passage is going to ask you which question. So for all passages, your reading style has to be like this. Rahul, that is exactly what GMAT is trying to test. How focused are you? It's a test not just of your verbal reasoning abilities, but it's a test of mental stamina. If you're not able to comprehend in the middle of the test, I would suggest just close your eyes for 10 seconds, guys. Let your brain go blank for 10 seconds only and then re-enter. Okay? Don't skip an RC till the third quarter, till the 27th question. I would say till the 30th question. If you get any RC, don't skip RCs. RCs have questions that come consecutively. And if you have not if you skip the questions there, you might get 3-4 questions wrong in a row. Whatever you do, it is not going to work in your benefit. Till the third quarter, don't skip anything, guys. The later questions have lower weightage, Rahul, all right? So from the 31st question onwards, in fact, I would say the fourth quarter questions have slightly lower weightage than the earlier questions. And in the fourth quarter itself, the later half of the fourth quarter questions have even lower weightage than the earlier questions. So please don't save the best for the last. It won't work here. Okay? Make sure that you give your best for the first 30 questions, I would say. For the last 6 questions, make time as you can. But don't skip till the 30 questions. In fact, my colleague, no. So Rahul, you're saying you missed 9 questions means you did not have time to solve 9 questions? Or did you skip 9 questions? You skipped 9 questions. Okay. No, that's not the good right strategy. Instead, you should strategize your timing such that you are able to complete your 30 questions at least by the 60th minute. All right. So even if you have 5-6 minutes left for the last 5-6 questions, it's still going to work. Anuj, strategy to tackle RC. So this was supposed to be a strategy session as far as the reading of the sentence is concerned, Anuj. The best way to strategize solving your RCs is to read the RCs correctly. As I pointed out earlier, I want to repeat that once more, that build the right skills, okay? Right now, you're just reading a passage. Are you pausing and reading? Are you understanding the implication of complex words and phrases? Are you noting down the difference between the facts and opinions, and are you aware that this is the author's opinion? Are you able to understand the bigger picture, the overall intent of the passage? If you're not doing any of these, then you're not reading the right way. If you're not reading the right way, then that is not the right strategy. So building the right RC skills is very, very important. For that, you need to, literally slow down and first learn the ropes. It's like, if you're trying to learn how to drive a car, then initially you have to be very, very slow. You have to coordinate things. And then when you have learned everything, then gradually you speed up. So RCs, do not skip RCs, guys. It's the worst thing that you can do. If you get RCs in the last 6 questions and you don't have time left, that's the only time when you can, because there you don't really have any option of skipping or not skipping. Okay, you can connect with us on those numbers and then write to us there. You completed the test, but you kind of marked it wrong. Yes, I can get that. So I'm just going to quickly share the link with you where you can talk to our experts if you have more queries. And do let me know, guys, if you found this session helpful. So Anuj, we do have strategy sessions from time to time. I haven't taken it in the recent times, but Piyush has. You can just go to YouTube and kind of just search for strategy RC and GMAT quiz. You'll get it. So you can connect with our experts on that link. You can write to us at support. You're most welcome, guys, all of you. I enjoyed interacting with you, and I hope you too are going home today with some takeaways, some very, very important takeaways on RC inference questions based on the author's opinion. If you have any other queries, guys, I'll be glad to answer. So, Rahul, please remember, strategize the other way. Create windows so that you don't have to skip those 9 questions in between. Rather, if you have to skip the last 4 or 5 questions, all right? Yes, Rahul, I myself take private tutoring a lot. In fact, that is one of my, let's say, strong areas. If you just want RC, perhaps you can opt for just a few sessions, then you probably won't get access to the course. We'll have to talk about it. In fact, Rahul, why don't you reach out to our experts on calendly.com and ask them about it. All right? Perhaps we can do that. You're welcome, Letson. Thank you, all of you guys, and welcome all of you for your thank yous. We are going to meet soon again because I keep holding these webinars very frequently. So it was very, very nice interacting with you guys today. Very, very interactive. Do let me know. In fact, we keep coming up with these Wednesdays with quizzes. I don't know if you're aware of it or not. Every Wednesday, we hold this 45-minute session on one particular aspect of any topic. Say, for example, last Wednesday, I had this session on the correct usage of ing modifiers, all right? So, and similarly, we have similar sessions for quant as well. So every Wednesday, look out for the space on YouTube. It's live at 8 or 9 p.m. Usually the timing is like that. Thank you so much, Ashish. So good to know that you're a GMAT quiz student. All right, guys. So very good day to all of you if you've just begun your day, and a good night to all of you if you're ending your day, and have a nice day if you're just in the middle of it. Take care. Bye-bye.